Ukraine pulled off an even bolder feat with the spectacular bombing of a distribution center crucial across Russia, deep within the territory of the Russian Federation. We are here not far from Moscow, witnessing an expansion of the war, both geographically and in name. Xavier Titelman, you're the best equipped to explain just what a masterstroke the Ukrainians have pulled off by striking these Wildberries centers one after another.
By the way, we should start with that. Why Wildberries? It's a company that's a bit like the Russian Amazon, selling military equipment. They have a special section for the special military operation. They sell components for drones, optical systems, and lots of individual combat gear. And their centers are also used for Russian military logistics. And by the way, it's a company that makes 75 billion euros in annual revenue. That represents 3% of the Russian GDP. 4 million Russians make a living from Wildberries. So when this company collapses, because now it really has no way out, it's obviously going to cause a huge stir in Russian society. This company is going to go bankrupt. It is in debt to the tune of $15 billion. So even the banks will have to be recapitalized. It's going to cost the Russian state a huge amount of money, and not just for this company. So targeting them is kind of the next logical step after the refineries, export capacity, and the Russian ships. Now it's Wildberries. Tomorrow, there will certainly be other targets.
You said 4 million employees.
4 million people who depend directly or indirectly on Wildberries for a living.
It sounds crazy. I mean, we try to mentally go back to the Soviet Union era. We're talking about a nuclear power, a nuclear superpower, but one that's so fragile that now it's taking incredible hits.
And here we are in the heart of Moscow, in the area that's supposed to be the best protected. The Ukrainians launched hundreds and hundreds of drones at the same time. We're talking about 600 drones today, but not all of them targeted this site, since multiple warehouses were struck at the same time. And what's even crazier is that we're at least a 3 or 4 hour flight away. That means these drones, which can now operate almost freely in the south of Russia, fly for 3 hours without being detected, without being intercepted, because the Russians, their traditional means, are not effective enough. Their interception systems don't see the Ukrainian drones passing by because there's now a certain level of stealth that has been achieved. Their fighter jets are not numerous enough to intercept hundreds of targets at the same time, and they haven't developed the interceptors that the Ukrainians have, which are the most effective means.
Let's pause for a moment on the image. This gigantic plume of smoke rising for I don't know how many kilometers, hundreds of kilometers. How do you achieve that? Well, there's the mass of drones, hundreds and hundreds of drones that arrived simultaneously.
So first of all, that means these warehouses don't have a fire suppression system, because if there were systems in the roofs to put out fires, it's clear that the standards aren't necessarily what we should have at the international level. That's the first point.
Or that a lot of drones have arrived.
But even if there are a lot of drones, at some point it must be overwhelmed by the sheer number. So indeed, the stocks inside are not properly protected. The Ukrainians are coming with kamikaze drones, which are the simplest drones. They're the FP1s, which are Firepoint drones that cost about $55,000. There are some versions now that can go up to 2,500 kilometers. Now, if they only go 800 kilometers, it's almost easy. But you need to understand how their bombing drones coordinate with others.
There's a sense of vertigo when seeing these images. On these shows, I can often attest that French generals watch this and think, what would happen if this was in France? That is, if instead of those centers being far away, 1,000 kilometers away in Moscow, it was around Paris or Marseille or Lyon, would we have the means to defend ourselves?
We're worse than the Russians here. Let's be clear. We're improving, accelerating, and are starting to get effective interceptors. By the way, the French company Alta Aries, which has artificial intelligence, has been integrated into the largest Ukrainian drone manufacturer called General Sherry. So, we have some French gems. Now, we need to buy them in large quantities. That's not the case yet. For example, we very recently approved having laser-guided rockets on our Rafales, on our fighter jets, instead of having RR missiles. So, for barely a fifth of the price of a traditional missile, we can fire 16 at the same time to intercept 16 targets. So, we've done what's necessary. 6 months ago, I would have told you we had nothing. Now, we're starting to have the technical solutions that we need to buy in quantity to be able to deal with this kind of thing.
Explain to us exactly what the likely scenario is. So these drones, how big are they? These aren't giant drones?
Giant. Their wingspan is nearly 3.5 meters, making them large drones. Smaller drones are used when you're close to the target. That's what the Ukrainians used to attack Russian airports, to destroy dozens of bombers. In that case, all of it was launched from Ukrainian territory. So, they covered 800 kilometers.
They covered, yes, nearly 1,000 kilometers.
Correct. It's nearly 1,000 kilometers because they actually cover that distance. Flying straight would mean going over defenses and cities, so they zigzag. But the bombing drones are accompanied by drones that handle electronic warfare. That means they jam the defenses in front of them. They work together. Well, they jam the radars in particular. They work together. So here we have a list of...
It's like fireworks here.
But there are more, and this is just the beginning. Actually, what you need to understand is that the Ukrainians, their goal is to make the Russians realize that the longer they wait, the worse it will get. Every day, there's destruction that costs billions. Each day adds years of repairs to restore things. If it had stopped 6 months earlier, it would have been better for them.
How do the radars not detect them? Because these territories are huge. You always have to repeat it, to get the right sense of scale. Ukraine is about as big as France. It's actually a bit bigger than mainland France. So that means it's a drone that crosses the equivalent of all of France, even a bit more and then some. During all that time, not a single radar detects it.
So the advantage of what the Ukrainians have developed is that they now have systems that fly on what's called a low-altitude trajectory. That means they fly so low to the ground that they can fly almost under the treetops when necessary. They have optical navigation systems that allow them to see the route they've taken. To be able to fly so low that a radar, well, when it sees the drone appear above a hill, 4 seconds later, it's already gone. It doesn't have time to lock on.
That's automatic. There's no drone pilot operating it.
Over occupied Ukraine, they have video feed thanks to Starlink. Over Russia, there, they have systems that are 100% autonomous. And then, the second important thing. Do you remember when the Ukrainians managed to destroy a large number of radar planes, the famous AA-50S? Russia only has 3 radar planes left for its entire territory and the whole Ukrainian front, which is totally insufficient. Even France, for its own territory, has more radar planes than Russia does for its vast territory. And so, simply to be able to detect these Ukrainian drones that fly very low, you need to have radar planes flying high. The higher you are, the lower you can detect. They don't have enough of them, so it's become a sieve.
How do you explain that Putin isn't giving in more? I mean, why don't they think this is the time to negotiate? Trump offered him that, on a silver platter. He's not taking it.
But Putin can't, ideologically, say that his war is over when he hasn't managed to take even the minimum of what he demanded, which was simply the Donbass. So as long as they haven't managed to show a strategic victory, like, I've finished conquering the new Novorossiya, etc., he can't stop. And if he stops, his economy collapses. He can't invest as planned. So his regime is in danger.
How far can Putin go now? Look at what happened in the Rome region at this KNDS factory, the Franco-Italian consortium that makes military equipment to fight Russia. And explicitly, Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, says, we will now intensify our actions against all those who provide military equipment to Ukraine. That sounds like a claim of responsibility.
In that case, the United States should have bombed the USSR during the Vietnam War, since the USSR was supporting an allied country that was under attack. Supporting an attacked country doesn't make us co-belligerents, so Russia shouldn't be here. By the way, at that point, Russia should return the equipment in its planes, its helicopters, its tanks. And that's French equipment. When Thales, Safran, when we were providing equipment, we were co-belligerents with Russia against Ukraine, since our equipment kills Ukrainians every day. Eventually, we must admit, we're not in this war. We're just supporting one side, and they have no right to attack us. The issue is that by not responding to Russia's increasingly violent aggressions, they're the ones escalating and talking more about incursions and related matters. Here, we're talking about Italy. 3 days earlier, it was in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, there's something significant. The Gabrovo prosecutor's office has opened an investigation for arson, and the factory managers said there was no human error. So now, on the other hand, we're starting to attribute this to a deliberate intention to blow it up. In 2014, when, in the Czech Republic, the Russians, the GRU, blew up a munitions depot, it was attributed to preventing the Czechs from supplying Ukraine. We now have countless examples, in Germany, in Poland, where it's officially attributed to Russia, and our response has been non-existent. Even though there are a number of responses that could be given without escalating things. What should be done is to say, if you carry out an attack in Germany against an Antonov in Leipzig, I will give 50 cruise missiles to Ukraine.
These are the images from Bulgaria that we have in front of us.
There you go, in Bulgaria. You blow up my depot, I give 100,000 shells to Ukraine. You fly drones over our territory, I give long-range missiles to Ukraine so they can shoot down your fighter jets. And then they would stop escalating. General Et.
Xavier, look at these images. Belousov from Russian defense, who appeared in what seems to be a field setting. Even as reports are increasing both in Russia and Ukraine about the imminence of a general mobilization, or at least a partial one of great significance in Russia, according to Ukrainian sources and authorities, it would be between 300,000 and 500,000 men who, after September 21, could be enlisted. And earlier, on this set, General Abret said, yes, this will change the scale of the war.
I've spoken with Ukraine recently, and they told me that last year, Russia had 417,000 recruits. The previous year, it was 400,000. The problem for the Russians is that they can no longer recruit. There are fewer and fewer volunteers. They can't reach their quota anymore. And current recruitments are costing them almost $50,000 per person who joins the army. And mobilizing, 500,000 men in the end, is more or less on the same scale as in the past. Except that for the Russians, it will be free, and they won't have any problems or difficulties with recruitment. But if they go up to 800,000, as is also being considered, then that's a real buildup. And maybe also it's to make up for losses on one hand, but also to reinforce the front and position themselves against Europe.
800,000 would be the current numbers, plus 500,000.
That's right, it's 500,000. The current number is 400,000 per year, so doubling would mean 800,000. 500,000 isn't much different, since they've already lost 1 million since the start. But 800,000 would be 300,000 more than usual. Thank you.